Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. I was hurt when Baylan Skoll so nonchalantly left Shin Hati behind.
Contact throne. Kill Sabine Wren and Ezra Bridger. Then take your place in the coming empire.
You won't help?
Your ambition drives you in one direction. My path lies in another.
Just like that? I mean, what happened to Skoll and Hati? Wolves of the apocalypse, ride until Ragnarok. They were supposed to see this through till the end, master and apprentice. Was it all just talk then?
Like me.
No. He was trained as a Jedi. You, I trained to be something more.
I don't know, Balyan. Ezra might have been trained as a Jedi by Kanan Jarrus, but the man gave his life for his apprentice. And even in the next realm, he still managed to watch over Ezra and guide him in the right direction. I mean, even the Sith, in their own crazy way, sought to make the next generation stronger. So what caused Baylan Skoll to just say goodbye to his apprentice so abruptly? I always felt a genuine connection between these two. I mean, Shin Hati definitely looked up to Baylan and sought his approval.
The gods would not delay them long.
But you will.
And she was obedient to him.
Send this one to the planet Lethal.
Master?
Do as she says.
And him alone.
Shin, release her. Shin. I gave her my word, and unlike her former master, I shall keep mine.
And Hati follows Skoll's words closely.
She is on a fool's errand.
Indeed. You may follow her at your own pace.
Yes, Grand Admiral.
I thought you were to honor your agreement.
The little wolf yearns to be the big wolf, and that's because Skoll treats Hati fairly. He respects her, treats her almost as an equal. He doesn't seem to hide much from her. And when she asks him questions, he answers thoughtfully. There's a sense that he's not just trying to use her for his own gains, but that he's legitimately trying to teach her something about life. And does he care for her? Well, you be the judge of that. Baylan seems pretty pissed. He's almost emotional, which is not something we usually see from him. For most of the show, he's quite stoic. And that's why you can tell he's not a full-on Sith. He hasn't fully embraced his emotions and passion just yet. He still processes his emotions and controls them like a Jedi. He doesn't let his worry for Shin Hati distract him. He doesn't rush to her aid. He probably knows that she's tough enough to handle a hit like that. And more importantly, he faces his enemy Ahsoka, and he channels the rage he feels from seeing his apprentice go flying headfirst into a rock, into powerful strikes that ultimately dooms Ahsoka. When you're non-aligned, you can kind of tap into the best of both worlds. You stay calm and collected at the strategic level, and your emotions can power your moves at the physical level. Baylan knows that this is what makes him unstoppable. Even Ahsoka recognizes this.
Can't defeat me.
Perhaps.
And I love Baylan's theme song. It is so epic. But you know, after I put all the clips of Baylan Skoll from this season together and watched them in a row, I started noticing something about him. Something that I think really set him on a different path from his apprentice. And this is probably why they end up splitting ways. You see, Baylan Skoll never went completely into the dark on the Sith because he is very much still a Jedi. Or perhaps a dark Jedi, which is, I know, a controversial term. The Sith would say that a dark Jedi is just a weak Jedi who has turned from the Order's teachings but is incapable of embracing and wielding the darkness like they do. On the other hand, the Jedi would just point out that the dark Jedi are like the Sith and have completely abandoned the light side. Neither side is correct in all honesty, and in their own attempts to label Baylan, they reveal far more about their own teachings and beliefs than they do on what Baylan's beliefs are. You know, sometimes in these videos I make, I get called a leftist and a fascist in the same video. And no, I don't take these comments seriously. I see them as a reflection of the commenter's own extreme views rather than my own. Most people don't fit into categories or generalizations. It's just attempts by other people to make sense of the world. It's just that your identity is usually a casualty of that. Now, Baylan Skoll clearly still is traumatized from what happened to him when he was a Jedi during Order 66.
When I was a bit older than you are now, I watched everything I knew burn.
The Jedi Temple?
Couldn't make sense of it at the time.
It's been how many years? Almost 3 decades, and it's still a really difficult memory for him to relive. His facial expressions are still full of pain and sorrow. And I think this pain is a huge driving factor in all of his actions.
Do you miss it? The Order?
It's what makes him ultimately not want to hurt Ahsoka Tano.
To kill her would be a shame. There are so few Jedi left.
That's a heartfelt statement.
It didn't need to come to this.
He's not mad or annoyed that Ahsoka is back from the dead. He's not being cynical here.
Well, now, this is a surprise.
Didn't expect to see you again.
Disappointed?
No.
And when Ahsoka breaks contact from Baylan during this duel, thanks to Hu Yang's air support, Baylan almost looks wistful as she's left. There's a respect there, and almost a longing for what could have been. Now, Baylan Skoll is ultimately a tragic character. I mean, every Jedi survivor, every survivor of the Galactic Civil War in their own way is a tragic figure. Darth Sidious was truly evil because he took opportunities away from people, opportunities to be happy, to start a family, to enjoy the company of your friends, or in Baylan Skoll's case, he took away from him an opportunity to live the life he was meant to live as a Jedi. You know, when people go through tremendous trauma, they process things differently. If given support, aid, and time to understand that trauma, people generally start to recover. They begin to process things. They're able to objectively look at their fears and anxieties, understand the situations they suffered through, so that they might better understand what they went through. I look at Holocaust survivors who place a huge emphasis on education, on therapy, on communication, and community. I look at how so many of these individuals were able to live long, fulfilling lives, despite all the tragedy that they suffered. You know, the most important part of their recovery was the defeat of Hitler and the Third Reich. A reminder that the evil ideology of the Nazis was ultimately inferior compared to the free world. This is what made recovery possible. It allowed them to recover from feeling so dehumanized after being carted off like cattle for the slaughter. It was confirming to see the very people who called your people inferior get defeated. But not everyone is lucky to have such closure after trauma, like Baylan Skoll. I look at my own people, the Chinese, who suffered through the Great Leap Forward, followed by the Cultural Revolution. Millions upon millions of people died of starvation, from labor camps, from forced suicide. I've met adults who, as children, during the revolution, turned in their own parents to the Red Guard. They've been brainwashed to find enemies of the state. I could still see the remorse in their eyes for getting their parents killed. But what's more terrifying is the inability for most Chinese people to be able to talk about this moment in their life. Although discussions are allowed in Chinese society now, one has to be careful who you blame and who you speak with. And there's also just a natural stoicism in my culture that makes it very hard for people to talk about things like this. And at the same time, the party who instigated all these horrors still maintains power. So whereas Jews unanimously understand that the Nazis were evil, the view in China about Mao Zedong and his policies is still quite clouded. Take, for example, Chinese leader Xi Jinping, whose father was a leader of the revolution. He had experienced great hardship when Mao carried out a purge on all of the high-ranking leaders of the party. Xi Jinping was probably the same age as young Baylan Skoll during Order 66 when he was sent down to the countryside to live off a starvation diet and work in forced labor in the fields. He was hated and branded an enemy of the revolution. The Chinese Communist Party turned everyone against one another, and so everyone was so fearful. And that fear drove individuals to lash out against proclaimed enemies like Xi Jinping. And so he was tortured and ridiculed by his peers. When Xi Jinping rose to power, many Western observers believed that he would destroy the Communist Party, be a progressive reformist. His family had been loyal and unjustly crushed. But what people don't realize is when persecution happens to someone, they don't always fight back, especially if there's no hope that fighting back will do anything, which was the case for most Chinese people during this period of time. Xi Jinping instead devoted himself to Mao. He made sure that he was the best young communist out of everyone. In his own twisted way, he saw that his only way out of this was proving his loyalty, being as fanatic of a communist party member as possible. He wanted to clear his family's name. He did everything he could to seize power eventually for himself so that he would never go through the trauma he suffered as a young man. He wanted power, unbridled power. Not power for power's sake, like how Palpatine pursued it. Sheev never lived a difficult day in his life. Now, Xi Jinping sought power in order to protect himself, form a shield around himself. He sought power out of fear and trauma. And this is what I believe happened to Baylan Skoll as well. He was never able to properly process Order 66 or the evil things the Empire did to him. And so instead he blames the Jedi. The only problem is he's still a Jedi at heart. He still loves the Jedi Order in a weird way.
Do you miss it? The Order?
I miss the idea of it.
But the trauma of Order 66 overwhelmed him.
As you get older, look at history. You realize it's all inevitable. Fall of the Jedi, rise of the Empire. It repeats again and again and again.
Baylan Skoll is done. He's given up hope, like so many in his situation have. What he says is not new. I mean, most people understand that history is just full of suffering, trauma, and war. But some people accept that humans can be cruel, and that they can be selfish and mean, yet they continue to fight anyway. They continue to focus on the positive things, on how good humanity can be, how beautiful we can be. Some people refuse to accept that we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of previous generations. They refuse to embrace the self-fulfilling prophecy that comes with pessimism. They don't seek power because they already feel like they have the power to change the world, and that is why they're optimistic. But we can't blame the older generation for becoming tired, because they contributed in their own way already, both positively and negatively. I mean, Baylan Skoll has clearly taught Shin Hati a lot of things, a lot of good things. And I truly hope he was kind to her, because if you take a look at her, with those hunched shoulders and tough demeanor, the little Padawan braid behind her ear, you can tell she hasn't quite filled in her armor just yet. And then while she talks tough and acts tough, she's still just a little girl. A ragged little girl that Baylan Skoll probably found in some dark corner of the galaxy, living on the streets by herself.
What is it, Master?
This is a land of dreams and madness. Children's stories come to life.
I know no such stories.
You weren't raised at the temple.
Baylan Skoll understands his apprentice. He sees that fire inside of her. He probably had it inside of himself at one point. But he's also wary of this youthful energy.
And isn't it our turn now? Won't our alliance with Thrawn finally bring us into power?
That sort of power is fleeting.
But unlike the Jedi, he won't try to restrict Shin Hati. He won't try to stop her from pursuing her own dream. He'd rather she experience what it is she desires herself and learn the lessons that he's learned firsthand. Although before they split, he does offer her one last piece of advice, and it's a good piece of advice.
One parting lesson, Shin. Impatience for victory will guarantee defeat.
Whatever power Baylan Skoll is searching for, he goes off cautiously. I think he understands the risks. Perhaps he wants to keep Shin away from the dangers he perceives, or maybe not. But if you take a look at what he speaks about, how he talks about the Jedi, about the stories from his youth, it's clear that these are behaviors of a man who's close to death. In those last moments of our lives, we go back to our beginnings. Those with dementia become lucid. Those who have immigrated across the entire world begin to speak in old dialects and languages. Towards the end, we begin to think of the beginning.
What I seek is the beginning, so I may finally bring this cycle to an end.
And so yeah, part of me thinks that Baylan Skoll is going somewhere where only the old really should go. Individuals like him who have lived and experienced life and are ready for the next thing. This new beginning, it might be the end. It might be something that is wrought with danger and terrifying things. But because of the trauma that Baylan Skoll has endured and the things that he's seen, I think he's ready to take this leap.